All right, Anthony, welcome back.
All right.
You shared a great story last time about all your dealings with did you call it the Boston mob or like more New England mob?
So we are. I would say we're not the New England mob. Patriarchas are mostly the New England mob. We were a branch of the Genovese crime family mob.
That was in Massachusetts.
It was in Mass. So Genovese family, biggest of the five families out of New York. They had a branch in Florida, they had a branch in New Jersey, and they had a branch in Connecticut and Mass. Connecticut and Western Mass and Central Mass, we controlled. That's where our territory was.
And what was your relationship like with the Boston or Rhode Island?
We got along great with them. Different family. They sat on the commission. Back in the day, Raymond Patriarcha Sr. was a powerful man, legendary boss, ran a big family, and he sat on the commission. The commission was all the mafia families that the bosses would sit on a commit. They called it the commission. Later on, it ended up being just like the New York families, but back then it was the Patriarchas were on it. You had the Bruno family in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and so the Patriarchas were predominantly Rhode Island and Eastern Mass. They were a big family, but the Genovese family was a lot bigger, and we were the Genovese family in Central, Western, and Connecticut, Western Mass and Connecticut. Powerful group we had. The millions, the money that was made in the Connecticut, Western Mass area for the Genovese family, which was our money, was millions of dollars, millions a week that were coming in.
How was that being made?
Yeah, so all forms, legitimate businesses were a big form of it, but all the street rackets, the numbers business. I had a numbers business that was doing $80,000 a week. There was a half a dozen other number guys that were also in the business.
When you say numbers, that means gambling.
Well, when you go play the lottery, you play a 3-digit number, a 4-digit number, and you go to the store, same thing. We were doing it all. They legalized it like in the late 70s, but the streets still carried it on, just like, marijuana is legal now, and it's still carried on. So we were involved in numbers, the sports gambling, huge business. I mean, that brought in tens of millions of dollars a week in revenue because there was dozens and dozens of bookmakers that were in Western Mass and Connecticut. So it's such a lucrative business. And when I say tens of millions of dollars, I'm not exaggerating. It was just that many bookmakers and such a wide territory outside of New York. You're talking all of Connecticut, all Western and Central Mass, big areas, and there was hundreds of bookmakers that were booking. You had the loan sharking business, like loaning out money. Millions of dollars on the street getting loaned out. Just me personally was, I had $1 million on the street, and that's just one man, and that was me, and I had crews of guys that were pushing out money. We had the marijuana business. We had the vending business, the Joker Pokers, like the slot machines. We had all the nightclubs and the strip clubs and the restaurants and the garbage business, and we were involved in the union. So the money that was involved, especially, I can only speak for Western Mass and Connecticut, Central Mass, what we were making amongst our crew of made guys and associates, and it was in the millions of dollars a week. How that got divided, amongst all the made guys and their associates, but what that was bringing in was in millions a week, 10 million a week.
When you're making money like that, you don't need to get involved in drugs.
Yeah, well, drugs was a big part with me because you're absolutely right. Like cocaine and heroin brought in a lot of law enforcement heat. When you bring in marijuana, it's not a crime. When we do it, organized crime does it, and there's violence involved, and they bring that racketeering in. Yes, it becomes bigger sentences. But marijuana in itself, it's legal today, and I made millions of dollars. That was my one that I made millions of dollars in the marijuana business, and I was great at it, and I had control of the Connecticut and Mass. I was doing business in New York, and marijuana was a big lucrative business.
And these are all strictly Italians?
No.
No?
To get made into the mafia, yes, you had to be Italian. But you could have associates, like I dealt with black gangsters, Spanish gangsters in the marijuana businesses. I dealt with black gangsters in the number business. There was all blacks and Latinos in the numbers. And because that's where the, like the stores were, they were going in and playing the number. and then we were booking it, but they were getting 20% to write it. So if you wanted to go put 1, 2, 3 on a digit and play $10, the store keeps 20 of that, and we get the rest. So there was big business, and so I dealt with Jamaicans, because of the marijuana business. But to formally be made into the Italian mafia, you had to be Italian and you had to be capable of murder to get yourself into the mafia. Which I did. I participated in, and that's how I was inducted. I got made in 2003. I had to shoot my way in to get made. They call it, getting your button. Today, it doesn't exist like that, but back then you had to. You had to put in work. Whether you drove the car and I killed the guy and you were a driver, but you participated in a murder some way.
Does the mob even exist anymore?
Yeah, the mob exists. Not as powerful as they were. People don't realize how powerful the mafia was. In 20s, it started off like, liquor, the bootlegging. It evolved where they were getting, officially the mafia was created. They started making families. And they were so powerful that they actually worked with the government at times with, back in the days with Lucky Luciano guarding during the war, guarding the where the boats were coming in, the docks. They helped them out during that period. So they rivaled the United States government as form of a power. That's why they were so. The government was trying to get rid of them. They were a national security threat, the mafia, and it was a global organization. And they controlled the unions. That was huge in itself. Nationwide, they could shut down job sites, and they had control of unions. They had control of politicians and judges and law enforcement, and the money that they made. You're talking millions and millions of dollars back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. And they had control of that type of power, and they were all murderers. Back then, you're talking not one murder. Each man was probably murdering 10 guys back then. There was a lot of murders going on.
But it was mostly they were murdering
each other.
People from that life.
Right, exactly. We don't, especially
civilians
as it evolved, we only killed each other.
Yeah.
Somebody breaks the rules, somebody disrespects somebody, gets an order, and it's not like you get paid to do it. It's you get an order to do it, and you have to do it. It's not like somebody put a hit out on somebody and you got $50,000 to go whack the guy. It's your boss tells you to, if you're a proposed member, which is you're going to be initiated, and they tell you to go, all right, your time is up, we're going to go kill this guy, and if you don't go kill that guy, you're a dead man. So you have to participate when the boss tells you to murder somebody. There's no getting out of it at that point, and it could be your best friend. I was told to kill my best friend I grew up with growing up. I pled guilty to actually murder conspiracy with him. He was labeled an informant by a group of guys that were actually informants, and my boss told me to murder him, and I pled guilty to conspiracy to murder. I had to kill the mob boss in my area because of the same thing. They said he was an informant, and I was told to murder him, which I did. I pled guilty to that murder. So I killed another man because he was cooperating with the government. So when you get the order and you can't back out of that, or you're a dead man.
What is it like to walk a free man now?
Oh, it's great. I mean,
knowing that you've put away a couple guys and they're buried.
The way I look at that is, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I murdered. Tomorrow I could get murdered, and I accept that. I'm blessed that I'm able to be here talking with you and being in California and enjoying life, having a cigar. I'm grateful every day, and I'm blessed about that. And but when I look back at my past life and the murders that I did, I don't regret the life. I regret murders 100%. I wish I never participated in them, but I did. I can't go back on that. I was targeted murders. I was warned by the FBI. I had murder contracts on me as well. That's that life, and you have to. It is what it is. I mean, I'm in that life. Kill, or you can kill or be killed, And there was a dangerous time in the mafia. Today, it's not dangerous. The mafia exists today, but it's not like it was back all the way up until the 2000s, up I would say 2005-ish, 10.
It was a really glamorous life.
What's that?
It was a really glamorous life.
It's a great life. That life is the greatest life, but it's the worst life. It's great in fact the power that you get when you're involved in it. It's intoxicating. It's like I was a king in my area. I was like a king on earth in Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, anywhere I went, treated like a king. When I went to Boston, the Patriarchas treated me great. When they came up to my area, we treated them great. It was just the money that was coming in. You couldn't live a better life. You know, smoking, my cigar was $5,000 a month habit I had on cigars. You're drinking the best liquor. You're a powerful man. You walk into places, they know who you are. Women throw themselves at you. You want to take a private jet somewhere, you can go anywhere. That's the great part of it. The respect that you get, the power, everybody wants to be around you. I mean, who wouldn't like that? It's like you're a superstar, but you're more than a Hollywood movie star. It's because they want to be around you because of the fear and what you're radiating, the vibe you're getting off. They just want to be around you. So it's so great, and it's such a, I would go back in a second to that hustling and making the money part. The bad part now is you got to participate in a murder if you're about that life. And then going to prison, it's the toll that it takes on your family. It breaks families apart. Like you got kids and you got a wife, and it's I don't care how tough you are, how bad of a man. You could be a biggest murderer, mob boss there is. You're still going to cry when you got to see your kids. You're doing 10 years, 20 years, 5 years, whatever, and your little kids are out there and they don't have a father to protect them and be with them. Like these notorious bosses, Pablo Escobar. He murdered thousands of people, but he loved his kids so much that he would actually, cry and not want to go to prison and losing them. And El Chapo, the same thing. It's like, your family is your family, your kids, and that's the suffering part. So, the life is such a great life. It's intoxicating. It's so nice, but then the downside is it doesn't end good.
What do people, because so many people glamorize it, they look up to you guys, all that kind of stuff. What do people not understand about it?
So just like they look up, like I looked up to when I was young, they look up to the gangsters. What they don't understand is on the outside, and when you're looking up, you think like the money and the power that they got. It is an evil organization because, once you get in, now you start to understand that there's jealousy, there's envy, just the human nature. People are jealous and they're envious and they don't want to see you get ahead of them, and that's the mafia is just like that, only with a bunch of killers. So, like your coworker at a regular job will try to stab you in the back to get ahead of you in a sales position. What they're trying to do is get your head chopped off so they can take all your rackets that you had on the street. So people don't realize that. They think it was like a brotherhood. Like, they look on the outside, they think it's like, this brotherhood that we're all for each other. And, when you go to prison, they'll try to steal your woman. They'll steal your businesses that you got on your street. You better be, you're not going to have nothing when you come out. And you're going to probably want to murder a few people when you get out because of the disrespect that was shown to you while you're doing prison time. And I'm not just saying that up. You ask anybody that goes to prison and has rackets on the street, everyone will tell you that people steal their rackets, made a attempt maybe at their wife and everything. You got to come out and murder that guy now. You're a murderer anyways, and now that comes, how are you going to just let that go? So another bad thing people don't understand is when you're in that life, you are responsible for police in the street. When you're a made guy, especially back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, you are doing the rackets and making that money. You're not going to let just some Joe Blow come in and just start doing a gambling business. No, that's our business. Now you have to go to that guy and tell him, pay us money or stop doing what you're doing, or if he doesn't, shoot him or hurt him bad or maybe kill him. So that's another thing that's never ending. So everybody thinks like when you go in there, I shoot a guy. Yeah, you're fine. You shot the guy, you killed him. You're a made guy now. But it doesn't end right there. You're going to have another enemy and then you're going to have another enemy, and the killings are never going to stop. You're never going to want to stop that. And so it becomes like a a very treacherous and dangerous life. And then it's like I said, kill or be killed. You have to be very savvy and always looking out for the traps that people are trying to put you in. And it's a dangerous game. It's a very and a highly intelligent, especially when you get to that level in the higher ups. It's a very dangerous, intelligent way you have to be about. And the ones that aren't like that they're the ones that usually end up getting killed.
What was your relationship like with law enforcement in the areas you were in?
Well, I didn't like them at a young age, because I went to prison at a young age. Anyone that went to prison young hates prison guards, any type of law enforcement, prosecutors, we hate them, even regular cops. You get older and especially the mafia, you need law enforcement presence to stay a powerful organization. Like you get a speeding ticket, who do you go to? You go to the cop to fix it, can you fix? So you get in trouble. You want somebody to get somebody out of trouble for an assault and battery case, or you need prosecutors, help, and U.S. attorneys, and you try to get that. But my individual I didn't interact with them. I was, I wasn't disrespectful towards them, but I try to just stay out of their way, under the radar, and not be avoided, and avoid them, not be noticed by them. When I was doing all my rackets, I just try to be like, keep my head down, and when I see them, look this way, and try not to antagonize them, so they would even have a bigger heart on to come at you and put you in prison and bring up charges. And
you did prison time?
I did total in my life 13 years, yes.
How was that?
Well, when I first went in 1990, I loved it. It was I was a 20-year-old kid. I got a shooting case, 5-year shooting case. They gave me a 5-year sentence for that, and it was a 1 year I had to do. Now, I was living at home with my parents at the time. You didn't have, you don't really know what bills are and everything. You just come, you can come home and sleep and all that. When I went to prison, it was fun. It was like you're running wild. We were in there with a bunch of us wild guys. We were loan sharking money in there, selling cigarettes, sports betting. If you wanted booze, or if you were a drug addict, you wanted drugs, and you wanted even woman back then, 1990, you could get it. We had a big Italian population, a big Irish population. There was no racial division in the state prison like there are in other states, So overall, it was it was a great learning. It made really pretty much me a man at an early age. My first cellmate was a guy doing life without parole. So I was in there with guys doing a natural life. And actually, when I went back 15 years later, that same guy going to him 15 years later, he's still in the same prison. And a lot of guys were doing life bids that I knew from 1990, and then I went back in 2005. So it was a great learning experience. It was I got taught. I was seasoned organized crimes, older gentlemen that were there, and I learned a lot from them. How to get out and hit the streets. I got out in 91 hitting the streets hard, and I mostly hit them with the marijuana business. That's when I formed a lot of connections with Boston gangsters, and that's when I got my start really pushing a lot of marijuana. Overall, prison was great, but let me just tell you this. Everybody thinks like, oh, prison. I just told you I was 20 years old. Any 20-year-old kid would say it was great back then. Now I go to prison in 2005, and I got 3 kids. Now go there when you got a little 2-year-old little girl and a 3-year-old little girl and a 10-year-old little boy. You got a wife that you're out there. You got a whole life, and your freedom is taken away. I don't care if it's a year. I don't care if it's 3 years or 10 years. That's what destroys you. And everybody thinks like, and it's not like you still do good. You still have you do your workouts. You get knowledgeable. You read books. You bust balls in there. Yeah, that's all fine. That's all good. But if it was so good, why does everybody count the days that they're getting out, or crying like, oh, can you believe I got 10-year sentence, and whining about it and everything? And they all want to get out, and they're all excited when they only got a year left, and then they only got 3 months left, and I'm getting out in 2 weeks. Why do they all want to get out of prison if it's so great? You know what I'm saying? So it's not prison sucks. You're going to make the best of it. So if you're there, you make the best of it. But who wants to be in prison? Like with your freedoms taken away, and you can't have a woman, all this nice fine things in life you can't have. So nobody wants to be in prison. Anybody that tells you prison is great and they want to be there, then they're bullshitting you. They're lying.
And you're fairly young compared to a lot of the mobsters that are around now. Did you see it deteriorate?
Yeah, so I got made young. I was 35 years old when I got straightened out into the made guy into the Genovese family, and it was still everything was intact then. What was changing was the streets there was a lot more drug gangs and drugs on the street, and it's hard to keep your crew. Italians didn't get involved in drugs, so they say. There was crews that in the mafia that did do that. Our family was strictly against drugs. Some of them, and so I would say that the streets started getting more drugs on it, especially back in the early 90s with the crack and heroin and cocaine, was always, so there was a lot of drugs, and the gangs were getting involved in drugs. So a lot was changing as far as the mafia is still an organized crime organization. It's not a street gang. We're involved, like I said, 50% legitimate businesses, probably even more. And then the street rackets that we do, the local gangs don't do, like things like that. Sports gambling, loan shark, and numbers, all, joker pokers, vending, and that. So you could see that the power structure, though, was dying down. It was dwindling. It was like the RICO charge started coming out. Guys started going away for long sentences. It was starting to change, I would say, like in the mid to late 80s, but it was still a powerful organization still, but they had that RICO tool that they were killing us with. And now they're killing the gangs with it, and all these gangs that you see, they're using RICO on them, because they pretty much, what they did to the Italian mafia was they destroyed it, and what they did was they got it to the point where they made us understand that we don't control the streets like we used to, and we no longer are killing people. Because when you murder, that's what brings these life sentences, 40-year sentences, and it brings a group of charges with racketeering, and that's what the feds want. They want charges like that because they all get promotions. Who's the prosecutor becomes a judge. Who's a captain in the state police. Sergeant becomes. They all get promotions in law enforcement, and U.S. attorneys get promotions.
Is law enforcement corrupt as well?
They were corrupt. I think they're corrupt in a different way today, not with the mafia. But back then, there was corruption with law enforcement. In our area, we had a district attorney. They had control of him he was the state U.S. attorney for the state. And he had a daughter. One of my friend's father back in the 70s was giving her cocaine. He was causing a big problem for the mafia. The district attorney went to the mafia. Long story short, they killed him for the DA. So from the 70s to the 90s, they controlled the state attorney. I got arrested dozens of times. Assault and batteries, dangerous weapons, shootings, and they all got dismissed because of we had control of the state U.S. attorney. Federal in our area there was no corruption, except if you look at Boston. There was total corruption in the Boston FBI office with Whitey Bulger and all that stuff. Total corruption there. With some, not all of them, but you're going to have corruption no matter what. In anything in life, it's just human nature. And back then there was a lot of corruption with the FBI office out of Boston.
How much knowledge did you have about the Irish mob in Boston?
The Irish mob was, I have a lot of knowledge being in prison, like I said, in 1990 at early age. These Irish guys were just like us, crazy Irish guys. And when I say like us, they were organized criminals. They were mafia style, but only they were Irish. And they had an organization, they called it the Winter Hill Gang, and So they had something that was comparable, like, to the mafia. The only difference is they didn't have induction ceremonies. But these Irish gangsters were dangerous. They were killers. They were money makers. They were Charlestown, Mass. was known as the bank robbery, armored car robbery of the country, right? So they would just go in there, rob banks, and that was their thing. They would do more things like that. Italians would want to do that. We are more making more sophisticated, like crimes like I told you about, But a bunch of dangerous guys in prison alone. I've met guys, an Irish kid, 5'5", 120 pounds soaking wet, killed 6, 7 people in prison alone. And that's how dangerous they are. They're good with knives, they're good with guns, and they had a big presence in South Boston, Charlestown, Somerville, in Eastern Mass. They had a huge presence. And they were dangerous. Whitey Bulger was probably, he was a dangerous man, rivaled any dangerous killer there was on the streets of any circles of life. They were vicious, and they were nothing. And it was good because we got along with them. Irish and the Italians got along, and it was sections that got split up, mostly in Eastern Mass, and that's about an hour from where we are in Western Mass.
And it was a lucrative lifestyle.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They did the same things that we did, and they were wild. They were, capable of killing. Same thing the Italians were. The only difference was Italians were a global organization, a nationwide organization, big, huge, powerful families in New York, bigger numbers than they had, and so we had more power than they did. But that doesn't. Everyone bleeds, and that doesn't mean that they were. They weren't as powerful as the Italian mafia, but they were something to reckon with in the as far as the underworld went.
Are you married, or were you married?
I was.
When this was all going on? Your mob activities?
So I was always, I got married in the early 90s. I was already in prison by that time. I was already violent. My whole life I was violent. But yes, I was married doing this during the whole time I was committing crimes. My wife never knew anything I did. I never talked about anything I did with her. She obviously knew I didn't work, and she knew I could get up at any time I want and come home anytime I want, and I was out, and she never had to work, and she never had and all the bills were paid, and she had plenty of money to go do what she needed to do. So she knew I was doing something. What specifically, she didn't know. And the reason you don't tell your wives is because they can get involved in conspiracies. I had guys that were that had wives that, say someone was dropping off money, and they say, yeah, just go by my house and drop the envelope off to my wife. And there's a wiretap that picked that up. And next thing you know, when they get indicted, the wives got indicted with them. I had a friend that was in my crew. His mother got indicted on the a racketeering case. So I never told my wife anything. I never told any of my family business to my mother, my father, any of that stuff. My wife, I just went out, conducted business. I did it well. And, I only shared my business with the people that I was committing the crimes with. I didn't need to boast about it. I would, like one of my bosses would say, he goes, instead of being marching in the parade, I want to be on the side watching the parade go by. And, I would rather be the guy that's got 10 million and being a little bit casual than the guy that's got no money and he's wearing all these fancy clothes and cars and he's negative $1 million that he owes. So yeah, so my wife didn't have no idea anything until I started getting really infamous in my area with newspaper articles because there was violence and murders, and they started writing about me. They started doing news stories about me. So obviously she's hearing it now of her friends. I was a mob boss outside of New York for the Genovese family, so they're calling me in the newspapers, you reputed mob boss. So she's getting knowledge of that, but I would never sit down with her and have a conversation about any of that.
Seems like the wives just kind of would keep quiet and just accept it. They probably knew more than.
Yeah, that's the 90% of the gangsters. That's how they are with their wives, and no woman is getting involved in the mobs, in the mafia's business. You're not going to ever. In fact, you're not even ever. You're gonna talk to another made guy's wife alone somewhere. Like no one would ever go to a made guy's house when he's not there and talk to his wife, or go inside the house, and because he'll get murdered. Though he'll get killed for that. So the wives never had any part of it. They're supportive of their husbands. They a lot of them knew what their husbands were about, and they're worried about them and they're watching out for them. But as far as participating in any of the crime, now if you go to Italy, it's a different story. The women are involved in Italy because they have to be. It's a different ball game out there. There's smaller towns. When a war goes on, they're murdering everybody, and so the wives have to get involved to help the husband survive. So in Italy, it's different.
Do you ever regret getting into that lifestyle?
I do regret getting into that lifestyle because what it did to my family. It destroyed. Like I had 3 little kids at the time. I had was facing a death penalty case, life in prison. Knowing you're going to be away from your family and children is a hard thing to deal with, and especially if you're going to go away for life. So I regret, putting myself in that position. And the reason I was in that position was for the violence. So overall, I regret the violence. Now, if you say, do I regret living that life? No. But do I regret getting involved in the parts where I could get a life prison? Because do I have remorse about the murders? I don't. We killed each other. They try to kill me, I kill them. So it goes both ways. But do I regret getting into it maybe for a selfish reason because it's going to cause me a life sentence? Yes. But would I go back and commit all the crimes that I did to make me tens of millions of dollars? And I would go back to that in a second, because the most you're going to get with no violence is a couple of years in prison. They're not going to target you like that. They target you once they know that you're dropping bodies. Once you drop bodies, the game changes. It's a totally different game.
One last question, Anthony. What would you say is the most important thing you learned? How old are you?
I'm 56 right now.
You're 56.
Yeah.
You look awfully good for 56.
Oh, thank you.
What would you say is the most important thing you've learned in your 56 years?
In that business, or in
or
life
just in life in general? Either way.
What I would have to say I learned is, don't take things for granted, which I did, and be grateful for what you have. And I wasn't as grateful as I should have been. I was a multimillionaire in the 90s, and I had a great family, and I had great people around me. I had, I was married, but I had a girl by my side that stuck with me throughout the whole time. And so I'm grateful. I should have been more grateful that I had a life that people would only dream about. And I should have been more cautious about that and guarded it more. And I was reckless, and I lost it all. So, it goes from, people like to hear those stories. I had everything. I was on top of the world. There's nothing I could want in life. That I had all the money there was. I had a beautiful family. I had, a girlfriend that was with me, solid with me. And probably that I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. And I threw it all away because I took life for granted, and I wasn't grateful enough to be thankful enough to say what I had, and be strong enough to say no to, when it came to those murders and the violence that took place. Because as everybody makes mistakes. You have these young kids that are 17 years old that murder someone. I was in prisons with dozens and dozens of them. My friend Manny went to prison at 17 years old. Greatest kid there was, gentleman, nice kid. He made a mistake at 17, and he murdered someone, and he had to do like almost 30 years in prison. He got out finally, and he was a great kid. So you make mistakes, and with time, age, wisdom and knowledge come. And now I'm 56, and I appreciate life. You look at life differently, And I look back at my life, and to be honest, it's like it's too different of me. It's like I can't believe I was involved in all those, murder conspiracies, murders, violence. I look back at the life lived, and sometimes I don't even believe it. And so I would say just to be more grateful and have gratitude in life for the things that you have, and not wanting more, you'll get more. And and I've also, so that's one way of looking at things, but also learning something new every day. Instead of, when I go to the gym, instead of listening to music, I listen to intelligent podcasts about health and what kinds of nutrients and foods and all kinds of things that help your body and nourish you, and just get knowledge of philosophy. When I was in prison, I read a lot of books. Philosophy were get help books, self-help books. And one of the best philosophy books I read was As a Man Thinketh with James Allen. And these books give you that knowledge and intelligence that it's like, wow, and you get strength from it. And so that's you learn as you go. As we get older, you get more wiser and you get more knowledge. Like today, somebody could disrespect me. 10, 15 years ago, I would want to put a bullet in their head. And today I could deal with it in a certain way where I wouldn't react like that and save his life and save myself from the heartache of going to jail, to prison.
All right. Anthony, thank you so much for sharing your stories.
Hey, thank you for having me, Mark.
I wish you lots of luck from here on out.
I appreciate that. Thank you.